right, everybody. Welcome. It's Craig Perra. I am your host. You're listening to Sex Afflictions and Porn Addictions, a podcast to help you create and sustain healthy sexuality in a great life. Today, I have a very special guest, a fellow East Coaster, Vin Infante, a licensed psychotherapist, a mental performance coach, former firefighter in New York, which is really, really cool, and host of the awesome podcast, the 1% Podcast. Thanks for being here, Vin.
Thanks for having me, Craig. Excited to jump on in with you. It's like we're doing an awesome podcast swap.
Yes, an awesome podcast swap. Tell everyone a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background, and we're building to one of the things, Vin, that not surprised me, but I thought interesting. Here I am talking to a therapist, and this is an early conversation that we had, listeners, and really have strong feelings about therapy. So we're going to talk about those today. Let's start with the background, and then we'll kind of talk about how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, let's do it. Do you want me to start at the childhood, or you just want the professional journey?
No, kind of give a little bit of the salient points.
Okay.
The big enough picture so we really capture your essence and you.
We'll give you the abridged keynote. All right.
Yeah.
So for the listeners, here we go. I'll spare you the hour and give you 5 to 10 minutes. So I want to go into the childhood because I do believe that is a big point. When I was younger, I had always been bullied. I'd always been a bit of the outcast. I've been the kid that never really fit in. And it was me having to learn how to live through and in victimhood. Now, most of you listeners might still be somewhere in there today. In fact, most people are highly unaware that they're going through most of their lives living in survival. And that's exactly what I was doing for most of my life. So as I had been getting all of this bullying done to me, and you might be wondering, well, what happened to this guy? Well, for me, I was getting all of the classic movie bullying. I was getting thrown in trash cans. I got thrown down the steps, get shoved into lockers. I couldn't get a girlfriend. I had no friends. Life was a very isolative and scary experience for me. And so I was always in therapy or some form of it. I was always seeing a guidance counselor, a school social worker, the mental health workers. Then I'd see a therapist. I went to a Catholic school. I was talking to the priest. Nothing and nobody was ever able to really help me. And it was funny because I always wanted to help, but I just couldn't get out of it, right? I'd always seeked a way to overcome the panic, overcome the anxiety, overcome the depression, but nothing worked. And so I would later be diagnosed with depression, anxiety, and panic disorder. I had a lot of suicidal ideation, a lot of self-harm, and I was always trying to figure out why do people hate me? Why does life suck? Why are people so mean? I was asking the wrong questions for most of my life. And one thing that I've learned about the brain is that any question you ask it will always produce an answer for. And so I didn't know this as a young kid. Maybe some of you still struggle with this today, but you have to be cognizant of the questions you ask. And funny enough, when I would go to therapy, they never really asked me good questions either. They would just ask me, well, how does it make you feel that you're depressed? I don't know, man. It makes me feel sad. How does it make you feel that you're getting bullied? I don't know, like crap. Who wants to get bullied? And you start realizing, actually, and maybe some of you guys have experienced this too, I would leave the therapy office and I would feel worse than when I went in. And I don't know if that was a common experience for you guys, but for me, it was like a weekly basis. I would go in, I'd vent about my life, I'd talk about how crappy everything and everybody was, and I'd leave there feeling like I hated myself and I hated life even more. And that would lead into deeper depression and deeper ideation around suicide. And, we got to this point where the therapist was like, I think you should go on medications. I think it would help you. And I'm like, I don't want to take medication. Like, I know what that stuff does. I don't want to do it. And so I was always really strong against that. Now, we'll fast forward a little bit, but at around 23 years old, I had a pretty pivotal moment that changed the way I viewed life forever. And we could talk more about that later, but I'll condense the story for time's sake right now. And so in that pivotal moment, I started realizing that I had given my power away for far too long. And I started figuring out, how can I take it back? How can I get into what I call self-mastery? And so in figuring out self-mastery, I had started moving the blocks and moving the pieces of what can I take on responsibility of, whether it's my thoughts, my emotions, my language, my behaviors, my actions, whatever it is, all of these things, how can I bring it back to me? And that's when I started going on this journey of personal improvement, personal development in a deeper level that actually created lasting change. I had been doing, now the funny part of all of this is that I had actually been working towards becoming a therapist even in this time period while I was living as a victim. So from 18 to 28, I'd worked in every setting you could imagine as a therapist, and I found none of it to be fulfilling. As in inpatient units, outpatients, hospitals, clinics, homeless shelters, private practice, Department of Education. I did applied behavioral analysis. I was a traveling home therapist, and nothing felt right to me. And so I had been trying to find my fit. I'd been working on myself. And then that led into this transition of becoming a firefighter because I wanted an out, or and not an out in the sense of like I need to quit this field or this industry. It was just like I need time to figure out why I'm not feeling fulfilled by this. And I can always go back to it. So I joined the ranks of FDNY. COVID hit. And then in that time, I also started learning about coaching, which, by the way, as a therapist, I thought coaching was bullshit. Because as a coach, like, how do you get certified? Well, one, there's no standard certification for coaches. So all of you listeners, be cautious when finding a coach. There's no such thing as a truly accredited, certified, like standard in the industry, right? Everybody's like, oh, you can be a coach if you take this course or get this or do that. And so as a therapist, I thought coaching was all bullshit. And then one day I heard Tony Robbins. I fell in love with what he did and how he did it. I realized this guy's actually just the world's best therapist, but he's got something else to him, a little pizzazz. And that got me interested in coaching. And so I went and I started getting my certification. I learned under Tony Robbins, took his training program, got that certification. And then I started creating this hybrid because I noticed that there's problems in both coaching and therapy. And that's where I created this hybrid that actually blends the modalities. So I started doing a mix of therapy, mentoring, and coaching with people. It really started taking off. It was received very well by a specific group of people, namely high performers, entrepreneurs, and organizations. 9 to 5 people, regular people, didn't really like it that much, but that's okay. So I went into this niche that chose me. And then I was able to resign from the fire department. I went full time into my business of mental performance coaching. And now I do that full time. I'm a multifaceted entrepreneur. I'm a father, and I'm a loving, I would like to consider myself a loving boyfriend, and and a few other really cool things. But I think that's the abridged version, right? Did I do well, Craig? Is that too long or too little?
Yeah, no, that's great, Vin. Thank you so much for that. I did not realize the depth of some of the pain that you experienced as a kid. You talk to someone who's like me, you got on the outside, maybe we got it all together, and then you had heard my journey before I heard yours, and that's a lot. I just was thinking as you were talking how easy it is as a kid, like, in the garbage pail. It's the funny joke in the movie. It's
Yeah.
fucking traumatizing, man. Like, it's fucking cruel.
Yeah, but it's a funny story now. I actually like telling that story. I think it's hilarious.
Well, look at all the healing. You can look back and laugh and know that pain brought you to where you are today, and you're pretty happy.
Well, I have a lot of gratitude for where I am today because back when I was younger, I always loved being able to, like, listen, I don't want to sit here and just drone on about my story because I feel like that's boring because there's so many cool things that we could talk about. But one of the things is that I always am grateful to be able to be in a position to do these things just because of the fact that my younger self didn't really think that I'd still be here. I mean, man, I was consistently thinking about suicide, like consistently figuring out the exciting ways I might be able to do it, consistently thinking maybe I will not be here next week, next month, next year. And so now it's like I'm a guy in my 30s with a family and a thriving business and all this crazy stuff. And it's like, damn, that's really cool to just have all of that. Like, not whether it's massively successful or not, it's just really cool to have all of it. Because if you talked to me when I was younger, I probably would have told you, yeah, I don't know if I'll be around past like 20.
Let's talk about therapy. And
Yeah.
so both you and I have done extensive therapy. Now, my experience with therapy maybe was a little different. I had some really powerful transformative moments in therapy. Let me say it. Many transformative moments in therapy, but I later learned that those emotional catharsis moments like aren't evidence of you actually like it's not enough to be successful, right? But
Sure.
the model built to that, and it was celebrated. That was the breakthrough. The therapist helped me crack through and break down that wall, and feel that thing that I couldn't feel. So I had, a lot of those moments. And because of my having a lot of trauma, each new therapist that I saw would crack their knuckles and get ready to dig in. Well-intentioned, very kind, but it wasn't very practical. I wasn't learning tools. It was problem-centric in the sense that it was me setting the agenda and talking about only problems and very, very little in the way of solutions. So what do you say to, or I don't even know what the right question is, Vin. Let's talk about that frustration with traditional therapy. Kind of give me your perspective. I told you a little bit about my experience, but anything you can add to that part of the conversation. So people, and listeners is like, listen, you're getting help. Good. Let's make sure that you're getting the right help. In fact, this is going to be the subject of my next podcast, Vin, how to measure success in your therapeutic relationship. And I'm doing it because 70% of my clients come from therapy. So obviously there's a hole, right? Obviously we are filling a hole, but give us, tell me what you think about that.
I think that most therapists suck, just like I think most coaches suck. I think that most people are generalists. And when you're a generalist in something that's as important as personal development, you're not going to create change. And I think that most therapists are just supporting a broken business model, because therapy is a great business model. Check it out. You tell people you're going to come in for 20, 30 years. You never solve your problem. You just learn how to manage it better. And the way you learn how to manage it better is because we create awareness around it. And then why you're doing these things, and you'll keep doing them, but at least you'll feel better about why you're doing them. And by the way, if you're really struggling, you'll also give my business partner an opportunity to make money off of you, because they'll fill your medication every month. So now it becomes this great business model. Come in, never resolve anything, just vent to me once a week, and I make money for 30 years until I retire. And so does my business partner who's providing you the medication until he retires. And then we got this great system set up. And so I never really like that. I found that that's what the standard of the industry has become, though. I think, most of these therapists don't really understand how to create change. And there's also a lot of emphasis around, clients being the expert in themselves. I don't believe people are the experts in themselves. I think most people are so wildly unaware of themselves that they can't be the expert in themselves. And far be it from me to say I'm the expert on you either, but I'll tell you what, once I start to get to know you, and if you're truthful of me, I'll become more of an expert on you than you will. Now, I can't feed you the answers, but I will be able to guide you and direct you in the way of having revelations that will allow you to discover them yourself. And so I think that this client-centric approach, where the person is the expert, is stupid to a degree.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So you're contrasting that with, someone who comes into my program, they got a workbook. What I do is I do a training, and you're saying that the model where you're the expert, because it was like, I'm connecting that with me setting the agenda. Like me setting the agenda. It's what I want to talk about. It's what's important to me. It's the questions that I have, which I remember realizing, what am I doing setting the agenda? I'm batshit crazy.
Right.
I should not be setting the agenda.
Correct. And here's the other piece of it. You're the expert on the current version of yourself. But the better question that I would have is, do you like the current version of yourself? If you are you here saying to me, Vin, I love the current version of myself. I just want to figure out something that has nothing to do with me. Because if you were a fan of the version of yourself, one, we probably wouldn't be doing the work together. And number two, you would indeed be the expert, because you've built that version of yourself. But you're typically coming in because you don't like the version of yourself. You're aware there's something wrong that needs changing. And how are you going to change? Now, don't get me wrong. This is the therapy part that's really, really good. How are you going to change if you don't have awareness of what needs changing? But that's really where therapy ends. So now you have the awareness. What do you do with it? And this is where coaching and mentoring are extremely important. Mentorship is the sharing of experiences and information that can help collapse timeframes and could give people frameworks and guidelines that they could follow, because one, you've gotten a result from it, or somebody that you know, and that's how you do mentorship. And it's also an educational piece. I might give you things to study, go tell you, read a book, go check this out, go do this thing, go sign up for this, go whatever the case may be. Mentorship is giving people new information and new opportunity to utilize in a different way. And then coaching is the action part of it. Coaching is where you put the plans in place. You give people the tool, the strategy, and you challenge them to get to that so that they evolve into the next version of themselves. And so therapy doesn't actually do all of that stuff. Therapy really hits well on the awareness piece, especially if it's client centric. If it has a different modality now, if you're blending other things into it, it might give you those better results too. But your average, this is where I say average coach, average therapist is a generalist. They're not really focusing on bridging all of these gaps and doing all of this work with you. The average therapist is going to sit there and say, so what's going on in life? And I feel like crap. That must be hard for you. Why do you feel like crap? Well, I think it's because of this. Oh, you think it's because of that? Okay, let's dive in on that if that's exactly what you think it is, because you're the expert on you, right? So that's where I see this stuff really just kind of fall to crap most of the time, because your average therapist isn't really like this action-oriented, problem-solving planner who's going to give you information and educate you, and like that's not what they do.
And then you got that feed, the feed to the practitioners who prescribe. And so you've got a model, and to your point, right? Let's be fair. And you were, Vin, I want to echo it. A lot of shitty coaches out there, a lot of, I don't know, I mean, I'm well-intentioned, but shitty therapists, right? There's a lot of people out there who really, really don't
Yeah.
know how to help you get from point A to point B. Do you think that medications are overprescribed today?
100%. Medications. And here's the other part, right? Let me ask you this. Do medications cure symptoms or do they mask symptoms?
Yeah, I'm pretty confident they mask symptoms.
They mask symptoms. They never cure anything. You're like, if you're taking medication for depression, you're not curing your depression. You're masking the feelings of the depression by numbing your entire nervous system. So you're not even, you not only won't feel depressed, you won't feel happy or anything else either. But you might feel a little bit happier because now you're not dealing with the pain of the depression. So in that regard, yeah, kind of your happiness goes up, but you're not curing the depression. You come off the meds, or guess what? What you always happens, eventually your body gets used to them and stops working. And then you're like, oh, I'm depressed again. I've been on meds for 3 months. I don't know why it's coming back. And it's coming back because now your body has resistance to the meds and you still haven't fixed the actual problem. And now you're going to have to change meds again and up the dosages and mess with your, your biology and all this other crap. And so, no, I'm not a fan of medication. I don't believe in it.
At all?
Well, it depends what it is, right? So like if you're telling me, hey, Vin, like me, I have severe seasonal allergies. Like for the entirety of spring, I sit in my home with air conditioning. I drive in the car with air conditioning, and I refuse to go outside. I take Benadryl, I take Claritin D every single day until spring's over. So here's the funny part. I know it doesn't stop me from having allergies, but it suppresses the allergen symptoms. And I want suppression of the allergen symptoms so I could perform at a higher level throughout my day, right? So I'll believe in something like that. Like if you need something that suppresses to a degree so that you could perform in a way that is not like, how do I say this? In a way that's not stopping you from doing some deeper work. Like I don't need to change and become a new person to overcome allergies. I'll never overcome allergies, so I need Claritin D. So that I need to figure out how to muscle through the symptoms, right? But if you're telling me I'm depressed, depression comes from this awareness. There's if you guys look into this research on it, they found that depression came about. Now ancestors, they were doing this research on analytical rumination hypothesis, and they found that depression came about because of the fact that people, when they're struggling with persistent depression, it actually means that there's a deeper interpersonal issue in their lives that they have yet to find a solution and resolution to. So depression is actually helpful because it's trying to draw you inwards, to sit with yourself, to focus on yourself and go through the problem and come to a resolution with it. That's actually the goal of depression. Depression is meant to help you. So in that, you would become a better person on the other side of it. Your identity would shift and your life would be better. So if you're taking a medication to avoid doing that, I'm not a fan of it. And that's how I feel about, all medications.
Yeah, no, I like that your example applied to all medications, because sometimes I think there's some bias. Certain people have bias with psych meds, and I believe that my mood stabilizer was really important for me at my low point when when I went beyond suicidal ideations.
Sure.
And I remember anxiety medication being really helpful when I could barely function and wasn't able to leave the house, without it, but dangerous, right? Because you can get dependent on it. I was lucky that, I for some reason I've abused every drug, that has ever been put in front of me, but I did not abuse, those medications, and they were helpful for a period of time. But too many, just like you talked about the generalists, too many primary care physicians prescribing medication
Yes.
without having any idea
Oh yeah.
what's really happening for the person, and that is, I think, causing some pretty significant problems today because the people really aren't getting the right help.
I would also say too, like the example that you're bringing up, and there's nuances to everything, right? The example that you're bringing up, I've worked with clients who have been on medication, some of which I've told had to stay on their medication, or one of which that I had said, hey, I think a medication would help you, because there are certain people that are at certain points. And mind you, again, I'm talking about very specific scenarios. This is like the outlier. I don't believe most people need a medication. I think it's bullshit for most people. But you have that deep outlier of like somebody so bad mentally that you actually can't help do the work with them because they literally cannot receive it. And
Yeah.
that's where a medication might help. But the caveat being the way you did it, a short period of time. Get the medication to stabilize you. At the point that you're stable enough to receive information and not spiral every second of the day, that's where you start doing the actual inner work. And while you're doing that work, now you could start looking at how do you start shifting the dosages as you're gaining more control over your mind, your body, and your spirit. Then you could start going into that lower dosage, gone. But that will obviously be dependent on those very, very severe cases, which, again, being realistic, is not 99% of people.
Right, right. What do you find is the biggest challenge that your clients come to you for? And what's the best advice that you give them?
So my clients are high performing individuals that need to be performing optimally for whatever it is they're doing, because they're usually entrepreneurs, they own businesses. Um, Occasionally I get hit up by a organization that wants me to enhance a very specific person within it. So it's always somebody that's at a very high level. And I'm usually brought in for the interpersonal issues. People aren't bringing me in because they want me to scale their company to like a nine-figure organization. They're bringing me in because of the fact that they're stuck on something, whether it's a leadership issue, whether it's communication, whether it's anger, whether it's a form of depression, whether it's the imposter syndrome, the anxiety. Um, I always tell people, as long as it's some form of a deeper interpersonal issue, I can usually resolve it with them. And so that's the biggest core focus of what I do with people.
That's cool. That's cool. How long you been doing this, Vin, with everything kind of going on in your life and the firefighting and
Yeah, I mean everything combined. I started working at 18 years old as a mental health worker in a hospital. I was co-facilitating and helping lead group therapy sessions at 18 alongside, obviously the therapist and the psychologist, but they would let me be a part of it, mostly because I was going for a bachelor's in psychology. And so they already knew like I was training in psych, and, they were giving me opportunity to give input and kind of get that great experience. So from 18 until now has been, I'll be 34 this year. So what are we coming up on? Is it 15, 16 years? Something like there, right? I
yeah,
don't
wow. Wow,
know.
that's very cool. Very cool. You obviously like doing this better. So what skills do you pull from therapy? You mentioned one earlier, Vin. Where is that, important? Those skills that you have? Because I certainly
Mm,
learned a lot from my therapist.
yeah. I think when you're looking at therapy, the best use case for it is creating that deeper awareness with people. So if we're sitting there in a therapeutic capacity, the bigger questions are like, what is your view of life? I want to know how you've written the narrative of your world. I want to understand, why do you believe yourself to be the way you are? Why do you believe the world to be the way you believe it to be? And what do you believe about the way you are and your place in the world based on the way the world is and how you operate in it? So I kind of take the two and then I mix it all together, because I've learned a few truths. One truth is that we don't see the world as it is, we see it as we are. So your external world is a deeper reflection of what you see internally. And then the other part is that we interact with the way we believe the world to be based on how we believe we're supposed to fit in that. So that's why I kind of hit on those 2 points and then mash it up together, because you'll see that we've created these subconscious set of rules for everything. So you might say, Vin, I don't feel like I experience love. And I'll say, well, Craig, that's interesting. You have a wife, you have 2 kids, you have a great group of friends, you have a thriving business with employees who are devoted to you. Why don't you feel like you have love in your life? Well, and then you'll say something like, well, I don't know, man. I mean, just I don't feel like I get it. I don't feel like my wife gives it to me, my kids, like, and then we start understanding, well, that's a personal problem, right? Because it doesn't mean that the people around you aren't giving you love. It might mean that your framework or your rules for what love looks like is incorrect. Or not even that it's incorrect, it's just you've built it to be something that maybe is unachievable. So we dive a little deeper and say, so what's the framework? Like, how would you know if you're feeling love? And it's like, well, my wife would show me. Great, let's just jump on her. What would it look like for your wife to show you love? Well, she would tell me she loves me. Okay. So she never tells you she loves you? Oh, no, no, she tells me. All right. Well, if she does tell you, but you're saying she doesn't, then the question is it a frequency or a time thing? Like, how many times do you need to hear that she loves you? Well, I would love her to text me 3 times a day, just check in, say I love you. Once I get home from work, I want to kiss to say I love you. Once I leave for work, I want to kiss saying I love you. I want to kiss and say I love you right before bed. And so now all of a sudden you start understanding, wow, this guy's framework to receive love is high. He needs 3 to 4 touch points throughout the day. He needs, I love you in the morning. I love you at night. I love you before work. This guy needs to hear I love you like 10 times just to feel love. And he needs to hear that every single day, or he's going to feel unloved. This guy is building and reinforcing the framework that he has no love in his life because of the fact that this is his belief of how he's supposed to receive it, how he operates in this world, and what it would mean. And now you work off of that framework to see, is this an expectation that we could shift, or is this a reality that we can't break from? Right. And
Right.
so there's so many different nuances or directions you could go with that, but that's kind of a little bit of the ideology.
Yeah, no, I like that because if his cup is never full inside, he can't get it filled outside, right? No matter how much love he got from his wife, kids, his dogs, his friends, his coworkers, or his employees,
Mm.
he can't, I like the old expression, you can't give what you don't have. And if you don't love yourself, it's hard to give it and it's hard to receive it.
Yeah, and then it's the perpetuation, right? It's the, what do we believe about ourselves and what do we believe about our role within the world based on what we believe of the world? Well, I believe that nobody gives me love. I believe about myself that no matter what I do, I won't get the love. So then I believe the way I'm supposed to interact with the life is not in a very loving way because I'm not ever going to get it. And all of that stems from the fact that he has an unrealistic frame of what it means to receive love.
Mm,
And so that's what I believe kind of that therapeutic work is, and it's about kind of looking at the frames that people live in, the narratives they built and the perspectives they hold. But I believe that's the extent of the therapeutic work, right? Because then I believe you get into the other modalities once you step into that next level of like, so how do you get out of all that crap?
right. What do you do about it?
Right, exactly.
So let's shift gears a little bit, Vin. Tell me about your client's relationship with technology, because it's not often I talk to someone who's like all their clients aren't drowning in it. So if my client, senior executive, has a problem with pornography or any kind of secret sex life that he's keeping from his wife, he has a there's always a broader relationship with technology problem. So it's part and
Mm.
parcel. How often are you seeing, problems as people come to you and, they're talking about this, they're talking about that, and you realize, like, wait a minute, like, you are addicted to social media, that dopamine reinforcement loop is sucking the life out of you. Is that common, getting worse, or pretty steady? What's your experience?
I think it's steady to getting worse, if that makes sense, right? Like it's
Yeah,
steady in the
yeah,
sense that I think people have always had problems with dopamine and always have problems, especially when they have high stress, high pressure situations. I think it's getting worse though, because in the sense that people have more ways to distract themselves.
yeah.
It's like, oh, if you don't watch porn on one site, you could go on another site. If you don't want to play this video game, you could play that video game. If you don't like, if you're home and you want to play Xbox, you could do that. And then if you want to get on the go and you want to play video games, you could grab your phone. If you want to, go to a friend's house, you could go on their internet. Like there's so much access that there's really never stop, right? Like we see things getting worse and worse because of that. Like even the ways that you could do it in a less what's that word, in a less conspicuous way, right? So like
Yeah.
when we were younger and cell phones still weren't really a thing and there wasn't any widespread internet, what did you want to do? What did you have to do if you were struggling with like a porn addiction at work? Well, you'd have to what, during your lunch break, grab a magazine, go into the bathroom, or like go find a quick prostitute that you could hang out with for 45 minutes. Like it would be a lot harder to get that fix.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I mean, dude, I'll never forget. I'm not going to disclose where this was, but there was one day I was working at one of my many jobs, so don't even try to figure it out. But one day I was working at one of my many jobs, and there was a guy, and he was laying down. He was on a couch. He was just chilling. He was like he had nothing to do. And I walked by, and I literally see him watching porn on his phone. Like literally, he was laying. We had a couch in this office space, and he was laying like this, casually propped up just watching porn in like the middle slash later part of the day.
And he
I
didn't get startled when you walked by. It was just like, hey, this is what we do, huh?
I don't even notice. I don't even know if he noticed. I was walking. I don't really have a heavy step. I'm not walking and thundering around, right? And I kind of move. I don't know, maybe quietly. And so
Yeah.
I just walked in, and maybe two, because there was other noises. Like there was some TVs. There was two TVs in the area, and they were on. And I don't even know if he noticed. He didn't turn. He didn't look at me. He didn't say anything when I walked in the room. He was just freaking laying there watching porn. And I mean, it's one of those things. Like you weren't ever able to really do that at any point until we got to this point, right?
Right.
So I think that people's addictions are worsened in this day. I think they are getting worse. Like even gambling, you don't even got to go to the casino anymore. You can gamble online. You could gamble from your phone. You could gamble from the computer. Like,
Man, those Super Bowl ads and the football ads, like all the ads I see now, trying to enjoy a little sport, I get sick and I get angry. I got to do my mindfulness then when I see another gambling ad, because I know what it's doing to people.
yeah,
I know most of these people can't afford it, and they're so creative. They're like the thirst traps on
yeah.
Instagram. They are so thoughtfully done, well done, capture the eye. It's brilliant, and we're, quite frankly, to your point, we're not wired for it.
And it's tough too because there's a level the term victim blaming has become really big in like sexual assault cases and things like that of like, oh, it's the woman's fault. Well, that's victim blaming, right? And I would mostly agree with that. I don't think usually in sexual assault cases that's usually not, the woman's fault. And so when you look at something like the term victim blaming, I also look at today's society as maybe we're still doing victim blaming, but in multiple ways. It's like somebody asked me one time, "Oh, what do you think of OnlyFans?" I'm like, "That's a terrible thing. I think it needs to be dismantled. I think it's absolutely horrible. I think same thing for the porn industry, same thing for gambling. Like all of these people are contributing to people's problems. Now, this is where we'll say, well, why don't they just not watch porn? And why don't they just not drink? And why don't they just not gamble? And then it's not that simple because people have things going on in their lives. Like people have problems, people have traumas, and then you're sticking it in their face. It's like, hey, you're depressed. Well, maybe you're depressed because you're lacking money. Cool. Hey, gamble your whole life savings away because if you actually don't lose, you'll win, and then your money problems are gone. Hey, you're struggling to find a hot girl that'll talk to you. Well, guess what? You got this model that's done extensive work on herself. She looks like a Greek goddess, and if you just pay her $20, she'll say hi to you. And so it also takes away from people being able to get out of these vices because they're so bombarded with it. And like, I think there should be obviously that level of accountability on the person that is, committing the action, like do better, work on the mindfulness, like fix yourself. Yet it's also really tough for struggling people who have so much pain that you're putting solutions right in their face. It's like, oh, you're depressed? Here, drink this. Oh my God, you're lonely? Watch this girl. Oh my God, you're struggling financially? Get win big, $1 million jackpots. Like,
Yeah.
what could you do with that? So I think
Or
society is
and
doing
look
it.
better, right, Vin? You're seeing this, that you're
Yep.
seeing the pressure on men's beauty coming into the man space. And
Oh
I'm
yeah.
not knocking anybody who does anything to make themselves look better, feel better, whatever you do. But you're absolutely right. The messaging in a capitalist, consumer based society, we are consumers and they are going to sell us anything that we can consume, independent if it's good for us or not.
Right.
You know,
Right.
how do you compete with a multi-billion-dollar company with unlimited ad budgets and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and access to every device? And by the way, if you look, anyway, I go down the porn funding rabbit hole, but you're talking major financial institutions are
Of course.
behind that multi-billion-dollar industry. You got to
Of
dig a little
course.
bit. They don't put the sign on the, on the Mind Geek building or whatever it is. But I like that point. You're right, because it is a capacity issue. And the God's honest truth is that people don't have capacity. The forces are against them. Things are harder for your average Joe now, Vin.
Yeah.
I've been,
Yeah.
blessed with some gifts and I, thank God for those gifts. And, but not everybody has them, man. And they're losing
Yeah.
themselves in this shit.
Yeah. It's very easy. And this is why men turn to vices because we need dopamine to survive. We
Yeah.
100% do. And so if you can't get it because you can't find a wife and you keep getting rejected on the dating apps because, whatever the case may be, you're going to go to OnlyFans, you're going to watch porn. If you struggle to find achievement in your current life of like, maybe it's physical, maybe it's mental, emotional, maybe it's job wise, you're going to turn to video games because video games flash achievements every time you do something. There's just a million different ways to get the same needs met, and that's what's so unfortunate is that's perpetuated and pushed on people that are vulnerable. I'll say it, they're very vulnerable.
Vulnerable. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a great point. Now, Vin, you and I both have a hard stop coming up.
Yeah.
Um, there were questions that you asked me at the end of my podcast that I thought were really, really, really good. So, one, I want to make sure you let people know where to find you. But I would love it if you could answer those own questions that you have for me for my audience.
Sure. Well, should we tell the audience what they are?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So on my podcast, our podcast is called the 1% podcast because we don't we don't see it as us being billionaires, but we see it as the fact that there is a 1% version of everything in this world. You could be a 1% pull-up champion, a 1% cake maker, a 1% father. It's just a way of being somebody that is striving to outdo the rest of the world in a specific category. And so the question that we usually ask our guests is, what is your version of a 1% life? And for me, my version of a 1% life is I want to impact 1 billion lives positively. And I want to change the way that the world sees and receives mental health and mental performance. As you guys have probably heard on today's podcast, if you're still here and agree with me or not, I don't believe that the current system is working. I believe we need something better. And that's why a big part of my mission is being that solution, is being the person that learns what are the things that are really effective. How can I bring it out to the world? How can I help people get better results quicker? And how can I create something that is so much bigger than me that it can create a lasting and sustainable change in society? And so I want to figure this piece out. I've been working on this. This is my mission. This is what I'll spend the rest of my life working on until the day I die. And I'm very in it. I'm actually in the process right now of building a coaching organization that will enlist superior coaches that will have different tiers of support. And I'm really excited about this. Has been very under wraps. This is actually the first time I've told anybody about this. So your listeners are getting a sneak peek of what I got going on. But I don't want to just be a 1% change maker. I want to create a 1% system that supports change going into the future, way past my lifetime and livelihood.
Legacy.
Legacy. And
Yeah.
part of that, Craig, and maybe some of your members can resonate with this. Part of that is because I have a beautiful daughter, and here's another announcement. I have another kid on the way. I just found out.
Hey, congratulations, brother.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. And so I wanted to impact 1 billion lives at first because of the fact that I know what it's like to suffer. And I think a lot of people are suffering. And I want to create a way to alleviate that for many people.
I
But
love it.
then the other side of it was, now I have this child. And man, when you have a kid, you think about everything for them, or at least you should, I think, if you're a great parent. And
Mhm.
so I started thinking, man, this world it's getting a little scarier. It's getting a little more complex. It's getting a little more difficult. I need to figure out a way that I can impact 1 billion lives, because if I can impact that many people, all of a sudden my daughter can have a better opportunity to live on this planet too. And so I want to create change for those two main reasons now.
I love it. I love it. That's awesome. Finn, was there
Thanks,
another
man.
question?
There was. So the other question that I ask everybody is, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Yeah.
So I have two parts of that. One is a piece of advice I've received, and I would love to share that. And then the other is a piece of advice that I read that changed my life. So I'm a big fan of Stoicism and the Roman Empire. Two really great things. And Marcus Aurelius was obviously and arguably the greatest Roman emperor and the greatest practicing Stoic. And the greatest quote that I ever read was actually from a teaching that he had. And he said, "Be tolerant of others and strict with yourself." That massively changed my life, because as I came out of victimhood, I had extremely high expectations. I went the opposite direction of like extreme ownership. Everything's my fault. And if your life sucks, everything is your fault. And I still believe that to this day, but I was very aggressive in the way I would do it. I wouldn't tolerate anybody who wasn't willing to be that way. And so, as you might imagine, that created a lot of friction in relationships and love life and friendships. And once I learned how to temper myself, I started having a better life. So one piece of advice for everybody is be tolerant of others and strict with yourself. And then the piece of advice that I received from my mentor that was life changing is, he told me that relationships are rocket ships. And that was something that changed the way I looked at providing value to this world, changed the way I started networking, changed the way I intentionally built my circle of friends and people I'm surrounded by. Um, because what I learned is, not only are relationships rocket ships, but they'll get you everywhere you want to go. And so build your relationships, be genuine in those efforts, and always provide more value. This is something I had to consider. Think of relationships as a bank account. You have to ask yourself, are you constantly withdrawing or are you always depositing? Because if you're always withdrawing, you have a negative balance. You're less likely to have good, fulfilling relationships, and you are less likely to get support from those people. If you're always making deposits, your balance is healthy. You're gaining interest on that balance, and that interest
Yes.
is referrals, being top of mind, friendships, genuine support. It's everything you could be hoping for.
Yeah. Well, and there was a recent study that confirmed almost 100 years of happiness research. The primary predictor of happiness is the quality of your relationship. So thank you for that, Vin. How do people find you on the web and your podcast?
Yeah, man. So you can find my podcast. If you're having trouble with SEO, it is the 1% podcast. But if you're not seeing it, you have to find the 1% podcast with Vin and Shane. We interview entrepreneurs, high performers, founders, people in finance, amazing individuals like Craig here. So check it out if you're interested in finding some good stuff. You go to my website, www.vincentinfante.life. I have a bunch of free resources and offer free sessions for people. And check out the socials. I'm on Vin Infante everywhere: LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok. I don't really use TikTok or anything like that much, but yeah, I'm always around, man. You could just Google me. I got plenty of stuff.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Vin, for being here. I had a great time. I look forward to doing it again. I always learn something when I'm in your presence, and really grateful. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I'm going to put all of Vin's contact information in the description. So please click, follow, like, subscribe. Thank you for watching or listening. Your sexual energy is powerful, and with great power comes great responsibility. Thank you for listening to Sex Afflictions and Porn Addictions. See you in the next episode. Bye, everybody.
See ya.
All right.